You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Okay, we're going to get started for the Town of Branford Board of Finance special meetings, budget hearing for fiscal 21-22. Tonight is the continuance of our budget process. We began last night. We will continue tonight, and we will recess after tonight and meet again on Thursday to hear the balance of the departments. For the benefit of the general public and folks that are listening, the process that we follow for these budget hearings and process is that departments will present to the Board of Finance. We will then cut the budget next Monday on the 29th with the recommended budget to the RTM. They will conduct a committee process, and they will pass a budget sometime in April or early May. It'll get pushed back to the Board of Finance for final review and determination of revenues, and look to add other at the fund balance and absorb any changes in expenditures, and we'll set the tax rate. The total budget requirements that are presented to us for next year's budget is $121,552,768, representing an increase of $3,310,000, or a 2.8% increase in expenditures. The estimated revenues are $17,559,000, which would equate to a net amount to be raised from taxation of $103,993,000. And when we use the estimated grand list of $3.69 billion, it equates to a mill rate at this point of 29.83, which is a 0.9 increase in the mill rate, or 3.1%. And at this time, we're estimating a collection rate of 95%. So again, these are proposed to the Board of Finance. We will consider it and make our recommendations accordingly next Monday. The municipal operating expenditure request is a total of 3.9% increase, or $1,767,000. The Board of Ed increase request is $1,458,000, or 2.5%. And the total, as I mentioned, the total overall budget request, the increase is $3,310,000. So with that, we will move to the first budget to look at tonight, which is Publicworks on page 38. Welcome, Gary. Total operating request of $2,505,356. Increase of $31,152, or 1.3% on the operating side.
I'm sorry, Joe, do I have to?
I think if it's green, it should be high.
Okay. Yeah, I won't waste too much of your time. We're asking for a modest increase. So I'll just hit the slight increases throughout the budget. For the personnel budget, the regular wages are somewhat flat. Overtime, the increase is due to added employees for events. Seasonal and part-time help, there's a slight increase to bring the wages up to a minimum wage. Uniform and clothing, slight increase due to the cost of uniform service, cost of clothing. Other purchase services, slightly up due to increase of catch basin cleaning, GPS monitoring, weather service, and vendor support. Other fuel, there's an increase in the other fuels, gas and diesel. As you probably all know, they're trending up. So there is an increase in that. Equipment rental have a increase also. Basically, the increase is due to storage trailers, the rental storage trailer for the festival equipment, and also it will and can include emergency storm equipment, breakdowns for rentals, and miscellaneous attachments and equipment needed for our needed to conduct our business. Safety supplies, there's a slight increase. We're added a little bit because of COVID. Face covering, sprays, gloves, things like that. We added that into our budget. And membership conferences, meetings, there's an increase due to our certifications for forklift certifications. We've got every 3 years we have to go through that. So we got 16 guys in the department that have to be certified. So that's basically the increases for the operating budget. And
okay, why don't we see if there's any questions on the operating budget for Public Works? Bob?
Gary, the tree warden maintenance, what is that comprised of?
Tree warden maintenance is basically tree warden maintenance is removal of trees, pruning, removal of trees, planting. It's all the costs of managing the trees around town, all the street trees around town,
So
within town right away.
It's ongoing, so it's not part of any emergency storms or any of that?
No, this is basically the maintenance for just normal work around town for trees.
Great, thanks.
So the detail, Bob, on 38.4, that's got a little more breakdown of some of the detail of that, the total amount there.
Oh, great.
Charlie?
Gary, do we have a contract for a fixed price for gasoline or any fuel?
Yeah, the fuel is through East River. And the pricing we get off biznet.gov, okay? And I could give you the average of what we're paying.
I just wondered, do we have a contract at
Yeah,
a
we
fixed
do.
price?
Yeah.
At a fixed
Oh, no, it's not fixed. I'm sorry. No, it's not
We
fixed.
don't have a locked-in price.
No.
They're the state bid provider. Our supply, excuse me, Chairman Moore.
Go ahead.
So we buy off of from the state bid supplier. It's not fixed, it's adjustable based on the markets.
Okay. I have one more question. On the street lights, remind me again, the town owns the lights, but not the poles.
Yes.
Is that correct?
No.
Okay, Jim?
You're thinking of the decorative lights, we own those lights in the center of town. The ones you see on the roads along the right-of-way, the Eversource owns those. Those are
Own any of the streetlights?
No, just the decorative lights and the cobra heads through the center of town. We did look into purchasing the lights, but we, at the time, opted not to do that. When Eversource elected to begin their retrofit, the analysis at the time was it didn't support necessarily buying it. There's where there may be the savings, there's obviously the cost that we have to consider. Now, we're required to maintain it, we're required to remove and replace when any work is being done. However, it may be something we want to revisit in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, other questions on the operating budget? Questions from RTM members or members of the public? Lisa?
Just a comment from Zoom that folks need to speak into the microphones. They could hear Jamie okay, but the presenter and some of the board questions are not coming through clearly.
Okay, so we'll make sure that we can be heard. Okay, no questions on the operating side. The capital items, Gary?
Yeah, all the capital items pretty much they're all flat, with the exception of the DPW apparatus fund. The request is $225,000 for this year. All the others, downtown maintenance, same, $25,000. Road improvements, $450,000. Sidewalk, $65,000, and seawall repairs, $35,000.
So that's on 38.7 is the summary, and then the attachments after that. So a total budget, total capital request of $800,000 is what it is. Questions on this request from the RTM members or members of the public?
Yeah.
Charlie.
Gary, on 3811, for the repair and maintenance of the seawalls, at only the Branford Point and Stony Creek. Isn't there one in Pine Orchard too that needs attention?
You talking over at Spring Rock?
Yeah.
Spring Rock.
At the end of Spring Rock, isn't that?
The Spring Rock, yeah, there was a staircase that was just replaced. And
Okay, so that doesn't need any attention.
It doesn't look bad. I mean, that's fine. I've been down there. There's a few things that need to be done with the staircase.
Okay.
You know.
Okay, anything else? All right, thanks, Gary. I think you're all set. We'll move on to 47, which is docks and recreational facilities. Again, it's under Gary's purview, so let's rock and roll. Okay. Total request $20,316. Want to hit that, Gary?
Yeah, it's a very minimal increase. The only increase was the seasonal and part-time help.
Okay, questions on this budget? Request $20,316, increase of $124.
I got a question, Joe.
Sure, Jim.
Gary, who makes up the seasonal and part-time help there? Is those the guys that cut the lawn and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, that's not, I do not manage that.
Okay.
Jim, you got it, or Jamie?
That's actually the dock master falls up.
Okay, thank you.
Through the police department.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions on that budget? Questions from RTM members? Members of the public? Okay, I think we're all set, Gary. Thank you. Next is solid waste management and recycling, and I believe we have a remote presenter. Is that correct, Lisa? Diane?
Yes.
Hi, Diane.
Good evening.
Good evening. So,
My co-presenter, Paul Muniz, is not attending this evening.
okay, so the total request is $3,509,783. Would you like to hit the highlights on that, Diane?
Sure. For the most part, a lot of the budget stayed similar to how it was in the previous year. There were a couple of changes. One includes a maintenance agreement for the scale at the transfer station. We saw an increase in recycling and municipal solid waste that came in from the past year. We are assuming that may have been a result from the COVID situation, but still with the increased tonnage, we're just using those numbers to project forward for the next year. There's been an increase in recycling charges that we have seen over the past year due to contamination rates. So the Commission is working closely to develop a plan to improve those rates, improve our recycling performance around town. But for the time being, we thought it was best to anticipate the higher charges for the recycling contamination loads. We believe that there will be new deep permits that come out for the transfer station. And then, yeah, I think basically that highlights the majority of it.
You're looking at a little over 100,000 for actually handling the materials. Increased estimate on that.
Sorry, was that material handling?
Yeah, you're talking 80,000 and then 22,000. So I'm saying there's 100,000 between the two of those accounts, and it's primarily because of increased volume.
So some of it is due to increased volume, but I would say the lion's share of it is really the increased cost for the recycling loads. So traditionally in the contract, the town is charged roughly $30 per ton for good quality recycling materials. When there is contamination, meaning when we put our paper products in with our plastic and bottles and cans, when that load arrives on the floor and is evaluated by the material recoverer, then they will say if there's too much contamination or commingling of those products, and they charge us at a higher rate, which is $75 a ton. So that significantly increases the cost to dispose of and process our recycling materials. And that has been, those charges have been what has affected the budget greatest, I would say, in the past year.
And I know last year we mentioned that as well. Is it getting worse, or is it under control, or
there's plenty of room to improve our recycling practices in town, which the commission I mentioned is looking at. We're developing a plan that includes more communication and educational materials for the community. They've considered some other options to help increase better sorting at the curbside. And when we go out to bid for curbside collection and other materials related to recycling, then we'll be putting in some stronger language to ensure that the quality of our loads is maintained.
Okay. Thank you. Questions from the board on this budget? Questions from the RTM members, members of the public? Okay, I think we'll move on. Do you have capital requests here? No capital requests? Okay. Thank you. I think you were all set. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, you too. Next is animal control. We'll go to page 66. Good evening, Laura.
Good evening. How are you guys?
Good, you?
I'm Duffy.
We have a total budget request of $388,547. Shows as a reduction of $78,479. Okay. You like reductions?
Hopefully you're happy with all of it, actually. So, I mean, just hitting on the highlights, we are anticipating having less campers at our summer camp this summer because we're limiting it to 30 kids, obviously due to COVID restrictions. So we're not exactly sure what that number is going to come in at, so I'm sort of guesstimating there. We actually think it's going to come in higher because now we're watching actual enrollment happen. When I did the budget, we didn't have campers signed up yet because we didn't put it out to the public yet. So, but that's where we're guesstimating. Beyond that, we have an increase in the regular wages and salaries contractually. And then our seasonal and part-time help are going up because of wage increases. The minimum wage is going up, as well as we're adding another camp manager because we have one of our animal control officers actually started the camp with us, and she's been a camp manager for this will be her 11th year. But we met with HR and they explained to us that she can only work a certain amount of hours because she's part-time, and so we needed to bring in another camp manager to sort of supplement the hours that she's not going to be able to work because she has to stay at 19 hours. In the past, we never did that. We always had her work full-time over the summer for animal camp, so we're seeing a little bit of an increase there as well in our seasonal and part-time help. Those are pretty much the big changes that you're seeing.
Okay. Questions with regards to the operating budget from board members? Board members, members of the RTM, members of Frank, and you need to come up to the stand here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Frank Tuhl from the RTM, 1st District. Just a quick question to you, Ms. Bourbon. I see that you're bringing forward some cash from your animal control fund balance, the amount of $100,000. How much do you have in there currently, please?
Jim, you may be able to answer that better.
Yeah, well, let me get back to that, Frank. The $100,000 was not for this year. The $100,000 is not for the current year. The $100,000 is not for this budget. The $100,000 is in the current year. You may recall when we were appropriating money for the animal shelter construction project, we looked at the fund balance at the time, and then we were taking $100,000 to put that towards the project.
Okay.
So it's that's for 2020. So it's about $240,000.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Finch.
Yep.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay, other questions? Okay, and no capital requests because you have your capital budget going on. You want to give us a quick update as to how many dogs are licensed this fiscal year?
Well, I'm going to say, I mean, I think Lisa and I will both agree that we didn't really want people having to come into the building to actually license their dogs. We weren't actively out there enforcing licensing this past year with COVID going on. People were struggling as it was. So, you know, I think this year will be a little different this upcoming fiscal year because obviously things will go hopefully somewhat back to normal. So we'll be able to continue to work on that. I think there was 900 and something people who did license. And as a matter of fact, this weekend we had a couple of people come in early to license their dogs at our shelter. So.
Thank you on that.
And Chairman Mooney, we also are continuing to use the drop box in the lobby for those that are not comfortable with coming into the office, but we are licensing also in person at the counter too.
Okay,
thanks.
And your project is moving well?
It is. We're still collecting donations. So even today as I was leaving, somebody walked in and handed us a check towards the building. So we're still working on, you know, fundraising and all the other aspects of it, but everything's going well.
Okay, good. Okay. I think we're all set. Laura, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Next is Municipal Government Buildings. Brian Droney. page 26. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Yes. Okay. Total request of $1,028,784, increase of $22,243.
You see that I'll have an increase in my regular wages and salary line item due to contractual increases in pay for my 3 custodians for a total of 1.3% increase. You will also see an increase of 13.2% in my fuel oil line item due to the constant increase in fuel oil. There's an increase in my purchase, service, and repairs maintenance line item of a total of 4.7, and the reason for that is there's an additional building added to my budget, which now I have to handle the elevator service contract, generator preventative maintenance contracts, along with the HVAC maintenance contracts. District-wide HVAC maintenance has increased due to we changed all the filters to a MERV 13 style due to COVID. These filters are more expensive, and because they trap more particulate, they'll need to be changed more than quarterly like we're doing at this point. And that is the reason for the increase.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Questions on the operating budget, Charlie?
Brian, you mentioned there was the increase in the purchase services because of new buildings that were added to your...
Yes. This year, the community house is on my list.
Who took care of that before?
Alex.
They did.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alex did it.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions on the operating budget? Questions from the RTM members or members of the public? Okay, Brian, we'll move on to the operating, which is for us, I believe, the capital, page 26.6. I think that's the total amount, $56,000 that you're looking for here.
Yes. On my plan this year is to power wash and paint 2 sides of the police department, along with repairing some exterior concrete veneer. There's a future energy projects that we're doing along with me, myself, and Diane McCarthy-Berkery. I have a small air handler and condensing units district-wide. The first one I'll be taking care of is the V&A building. And the second one is a makeup air unit for the Volunteer Service Center.
And that's under the energy savings projects?
Yes, sir.
Okay, questions on capital requests? Capital requests, questions from the RTM members of the public? Okay, thanks, Brian. I think we're all set. Next budget is engineering, page 41. Total request of $459,529, increase of $79,218. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So on the operating side, we'll just jump right into the salaries, which kind of a better breakdown on page 81, kind of where we're at. We got some contractual increases between the 2 admin assistants that are under my budget. They both kind of split time between engineering and building, so those are contractual increases. my salary is flat as we won't have a contract as of July 1st. The assistant town engineer was kind of going through the steps, so she was at 95% through most of this fiscal year. So in addition to the 2% contractual increase, she's getting an extra 5% of the salary to bring her up to 100%. So that leaves us with the new position that we're requesting, civil design engineer. Right now, in our department, again, we have the two admin assistants that are kind of split between building and engineering. Assistant town engineer and myself, with myself being the only licensed engineer between the two of us. So we're looking for kind of bridging that gap between the assistant town engineer and myself, where they would have a degree and kind of the first step of the licensing process, which is an engineer in training. That would be a required licensure for that position. Right now we have about $7 million in current projects that we're actively working on. There's an additional $5.5 million of projects that are, actually $4.5 are funded, but they're kind of sitting in hold pattern right now. We're just having a hard time finding the time to do all that, kind of get those projects started as well as running the active projects that we have. Just can I give you a rundown of what our department is, kind of our daily tasks. I know the assistant town engineer, she's doing cost estimates. We got the call before you dig, which is a state requirement, and really in the town's best interest to mark out all of our sanitary sewer facilities and storm sewer facilities anytime anyone's digging in the ground. Quite busy with that. She's probably about 2-3 hours a day is spent on those call before you digs. She receives and reviews sanitary and excavation permits. Anytime a building permit comes in, most building permits she has to review for any sewer conflicts or easement conflicts with any of those building permits. She's doing inspections both on town projects and any sewers that get installed. We're looking at contract compliance reviews, complaint resolution, and more we're working pretty well with DPW, Parks and Open Space, and the Parks and Rec to work on some of their projects as well. As far as my responsibilities, I'm the floodplain administrator for the town, so any flood-related issues come through my office. We're doing plan reviews for building, planning, and zoning, inland wetlands. We've seen some pretty large projects come through in town recently, so that's taken up quite a bit of time. We've got special projects that we're working with, again, DPW, Parks and Open Space. We got capital building projects that we're starting to administer, so we kind of came in the tail end of community center. We did Indian Neck Firehouse, Blackstone Library administered, and now we're working on the animal shelter. So that's, again, taking up quite a bit of staff time. The staff engineer for WPCA, we work at the treatment plant, on the collection system, and any other pump station kind of capital projects, we administer those, help develop the plans themselves. Again, general assistance to the public, and then we're working on that MS4 permit that's DEP mandated permit for storm sewer systems. Make sure we're trying to reduce the pollutant loads on the sound and the inland rivers, really. So all that doesn't even include any of these engineering projects that we have kind of in the pipeline. I mean, that's just our day-to-day tasks. So we really need, again, someone to bridge those, between myself and the assistant town engineer, kind of taking, some off of her plate, some off of my plate, and kind of work on some of these things like, requests for proposals, qualifications, writing bid specs, doing some more in-house design. We just don't have the time to do the in-house design at this point for those smaller projects. You might notice the East Main Street Island we just did. We're going to start a sidewalk project on Tyler Park. Those are kind of those nice in-house design projects that we could do without having to hire out for a consultant to do that work. I guess really trying to get somebody who can spend the time on, applying for grants, grant administration. Anytime we're taking funding from, the state or the feds, there's a lot of time and a lot of paperwork involved that, and we kind of have to set these other projects aside in order to really focus on these things because they're at hand. So we're trying to, right now we're kind of in that, stop the bleed kind of thing. We're in the firehouse and EMTs, but and really with this new position, we'd be able to move forward and kind of, instead of, reacting to some of the issues in town, kind of proactively looking at, maintenance issues and keeping that close relationship with all the different departments, kind of helping them out on the technical side. Again, administering a lot of these projects that, they themselves don't have either the technical expertise or the staff to really run them. So. Salary is set at $82,000 is what we're requesting. That's based on, again, this has been on my mind for a while, so the last couple of years, anytime a job description or a job opening has come across, I've always opened that, taken a look, written it down, put it in a spreadsheet, figure out, where the market is right now. $82,000 is pretty consistent with what we're seeing in those other job openings. And I believe HR had run a salary survey as well, and that's right in line, that $82,000. So this would be a 40-hour per week, 8 to 5 job. And it's actually lines up pretty closely to the hourly rate as the assistant town engineer. I envision them to be, really, co-workers as opposed to any kind of structural level there. So they both be reporting directly to me.
Okay. Thanks, John. Questions on the new position or the operating budget in particular?
Hi, John. Are there many opportunities for grants for your department?
There's quite a few on the flood side. We have the Coastal Resiliency Fund. We have this Coastal Resiliency Ad Hoc Group that's looking into, more and more projects to kind of, again, fortify our coast, looking for those opportunities. So there's a lot of funding there. We also have the Lot SIP program and the Low SIP program, which are state grants that come through, but they all have, again, their own, the paperwork burden is huge. There's a lot of inspections that have to be done, a lot of compliance issues and steps along the way. And then there's other funding that, quite frankly, we just haven't really looked that closely into. I know they're out there, but just knowing that the amount of work that it would take to administer those grants is far beyond what we can handle right now.
I was just going to ask that. Do you think there's opportunities that we missed because you don't have the time?
There are, and especially working with other departments too, where again, you get that kind of intermingle between, Public Works, Parks and Rec, that, we'd be able to kind of work on those larger engineering projects that have kind of alternative funding sources. Sustainable CT is another one where, they just got the funding for the I think there's a pollinator pathway right out front here. So there's opportunities for, kind of low-hanging fruit, and then there's those really involved. Anytime it's federal money, it's always ridiculously involved. But there's those opportunities out there that we'd be able to reach if we had, an additional person.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, other questions on the operating budget? Questions, Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Frank Toohill from the Representative Town Meeting. Just a question, John, for you. On the consulting services, I see on page 41, there's a decrease proposed this year, $10,000 less, from $75,000 to $65,000. And then on page 41.9, you state that you want $15,000 as part of that $65,000 for M54 compliance. What is that, please?
Yes, so we are reducing $10,000 from the MS4 requirements. So that's the permit that is mandated by DEP. We have sampling requirements. We have annual report requirements. Right now we're looking into working with the Planning and Zoning Department and the Wetlands Department on how to kind of remove some barriers to low-impact development. These are all things to try to clean up, again, all the waterways, but it's one of those unfunded mandates through DEP We're entering the final year of the permit, so I anticipate that, some of those tasks that are required next fiscal year will be a little bit less. So that's why I'm reducing that by 10,000. We've been able to do a little bit more in-house as it gets and further out in the permit cycle that, is very technical up front. And now it's just kind of getting into maintenance and picking out projects that we have to do, as part of the permit process.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
Okay. Other questions on the operating budget?
Joe.
We'll move to the capital. What's that?
Chair, can I just make a couple remarks regarding this? I just think it's important. And thank you. And I certainly don't want my remarks to be construed as a comment on, previous staff or even administrations. But I could certainly say in my tenure here for the past 8 years, and even with my interactions with the town prior to becoming first selectman, I think there's a coordination and a collaboration that's happening among our departments that I have not witnessed before. I know I've commented to this board and to the RTM how one of the challenges with many of our departments is that the organizational structure is very horizontal. You have a lot of different you have all your departments. It's a horizontal structure, and unfortunately, I think in the past that may have led to silos being formed. Recognize the fact I haven't been able to memorialize a new structure which brings some of those departments together in more of a formal fashion. But what we see happening in the last couple of years is that between the leadership that we have in these departments, Gary, John, Alex, and Brian with GGB, and you mentioned Diana. Now you see a lot more collaboration that's happening between these departments, which again, we focus a lot, or the public may see a lot of the projects that are happening in town, and that's something that we've accomplished and been proud of. But there's a lot that goes into it in maintaining our infrastructure. Whether it's the sewer, the roads, drainage, seawalls, that really require the involvement of all these departments. Our open space, quite honestly, is even there's requires resources. So I just think it's important, and I want to underscore the fact where John was listing the number of projects that were funded, but we have not been able to move forward through. These are important projects, and again, these are a number of projects that administration and the bodies, the appropriating bodies, have identified as being important to move forward with and understand the need to do those. I think this is a time, and we're in a fortunate position that we, through the stewardship of this board and our finance team here, that we can be creative in financing these. But I think to have the proper resources so we can move forward and complete them, I think is important to this town. But I just want this board to, and the public to know that the amount of coordination, collaboration is great, and they're accomplishing a lot, and I just thought that should be acknowledged. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie, for those comments.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so we have the capital request too, John?
Yes,
4111.
So kind of going along with the whole theme here, our capital requests this year are much reduced from prior years, recognizing that we do have about $4.5 million of funded projects at this point that we want to get going and get out the door. So this year we've reduced it quite a bit, and we do have Rosebrook storm sewer system that, again, reading through your book, there's a couple spots where it runs underneath the building. That hasn't been inspected, I want to say, since the earlier mid-90s. So that's been something on my list for a bit. And then we got a number of stone culverts that we recognize need to be inspected as well. say the Rosebrook and the stone culvert inspections in general will require divers, so that's why you see that kind of hefty price tag attributed to that. And then the local traffic authority projects, again, we're kind of recurring $25,000 ask. Right now on the list, there's about $131,000 of approved projects through the LTA. So again, this was something that we introduced last fiscal year to try to fund some of these projects and take some of the financial burden off of Gary's budget. Since there's a number of them are sidewalks and striping projects, and I know he kind of rips through that budget on a yearly basis. So we want to try to fund some of these projects out of my capital accounts. So.
Okay, thanks, John. Questions on this $75,000 request for capital funding? Questions or comments from the RTM members, general public? Okay, John, thank you. All set for now.
Thank you.
Next is emergency service and emergency management, page 33. Welcome, Chief.
Hello.
This is from what I see, this is a new department.
Yeah, this is a new department. These things have happened in the past, but
You're the chief of a new department?
There was no formal place in the budget for it. So,
got it.
So I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about that, and I would just like to follow up with the town engineer. When we do have emergencies, and this year's kind of been a pretty big year for emergencies, storms such as the Isaias and the windstorm following that, as well as dealing with the COVID. It's all part of emergency management. And whenever these storms happen, if it is going to be declared a FEMA event and we're going to get grant money back to the town, gathering all the data from the federal government is a huge part of that. And they want to see a lot of data in a certain way to even make us eligible to get that money back. And, a lot of that falls on these other department heads when that happens. Engineering's been invaluable to us. Jen Aquino spent a good amount of her time after the Isaias and the windstorm helping us out. And when she's doing that, she's not doing her other projects. So they're really all the departments, finance and Public Works, Human Resources, they're all really important to helping me out. So this, the Emergency Management Director, myself, and the Deputy Emergency Management Director, Tim Murray, each get a stipend. That accounts for the $12,000 and $2,000. And then we recently purchased VOC software, which is a software developed to help us manage emergencies and gather this data and make gathering and presenting that data eventually to FEMA in the way they want to see it much more easy. It also allows us to track throughout the entire event of the storm all of the different projects, road closures, trees, wires that occur. Typically what happens is when they're getting reported, we'll get out there and we'll hit them, but then we start to lose track of them because there's just so many of them. So this will allow us to track it through the entire event and hopefully even eventually to assist Public Works, where the road may be cleared, but debris still have to be cleared completely away and then tracked to where they're eventually going to go. It'll help us with all that as well. The total for the budget is $25,600. We apply every year for the EMPG grant, which is it's a 50-50 match grant through the state that comes through the feds for these purposes. It is a 50-50 match, so the total grant's $28,050, I believe, and of that, the town's responsible for half. And that's the emergency management budget.
So help me understand the staffing. These are stipends that would go to...
I get the $12,000 stipend to be the emergency management director in addition to my other duties. We did that stipend about a year ago, Jamie? Yeah. Okay. And then... And the 2,000 is for the deputy.
The DC. Okay. And so, and the total grant is 28,000.
Yes.
And so where does the rest of the money go?
The rest of the money could go to just incidentals needed, such as we do own some equipment in emergency management, like generator repair and maintenance, or if odds and ends come up. I didn't necessarily budget that amount of money. When we go to recoup the money from the grant, we will find something that fits the parameters to make up the difference, so the town would have spent its total required share.
I got you. So it's an in-kind. You're allocating expenditures, Mr. Finch, out of the budget?
I'm sorry, what was that?
So you allocate a portion of the expenses to this grant, and when you're seeking reimbursement?
Yeah, and that helps also with the match that he's talking about.
Got it.
And just so, for instance, we were able to go back 3 years through the MBG grants that weren't applied for previously, and we asked for reimbursement from those grants for things like those small boats we purchased.
Right.
So we're hoping to apply the money we spent as a town on those small boats for emergency management purposes as well as other emergency uses, and then we'll get the 14,000 portion back.
Right. And that comes in as revenue, Jim? Okay, questions on this budget, Charlie?
Hey, Tom. On the software, let's see, the maintenance fee is $8,000 a year. Is the support services also $3,600 per year?
The maintenance fee is a per user fee, so each individual who has a license to use the software, they charge a fee for. And that includes all of the people who would make up your emergency operations center, from the first selectman to the town engineers.
Okay, so that's the amount per year?
That's per year, yeah.
All right, now what about the support services? Is that per year?
Those are both per year costs to maintain.
Oh, they are
the
per year,
software.
okay. All right, so we're going to see that every year.
You probably will see that every year, though it could change depending on how many license fees. This is for emergency management, but we do hope to expand the use of this software, because currently there are no solutions for some of these other town departments. Like I mentioned earlier, Publicworks, they were looking at one, and for the people that were involved in that, they looked at this and they saw that it would be a much less expensive solution. And one of the things about using this software is we want to find a way for these people to use it every day, so that when they're faced with an emergency, they're not trying to remember how to use it. Initially it's mostly department heads, but we might expand that in the future.
How safe is the grant?
How safe is it? That grant's pretty much been around since probably 9/11 time. It's an annual grant that each municipality gets a portion based on their population. So that's why our
Is this a federal grant goes to the state?
It's a federal grant filtered through the state. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
This is a cloud-based application?
This is cloud-based, yeah.
And what happens when you lose your internet service?
We have looked to add a lot of redundancy to that, Joe. We recently worked with IT to get on the state send system, so if our Comcast internet fails, we then fail to the state send system. If they're on two different pathways, so then if that fails, we're on cellular, and if that fails, we eventually would go to satellite.
Okay, questions?
We did experience a little bit of that over the tornadic windstorm that we had.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Chief. Questions? Questions from RTM members on this proposed budget? Members of the public? Okay, Chief, we're good there. We'll move on to fire. You get some support?
Yeah, I got a little support tonight. So I'd like to introduce my new Assistant Chief, Gary Blomquist. Gary was recently promoted to Assistant Chief.
And who's this person here?
Yeah, and this is the Chairman of the Fire Commission, Robert Massey. He's pretty well known to everybody. We've, like all departments, have been asked to hit the highlights. So we'll start with the spreadsheet on the page 34 that highlights all of the changes within our operating budget. They are all on the personnel side, which is the top line, is all driven by the contractual obligations. We are in, we're going to be starting the last year of our contract. The budgeted amount this year for the firefighters' wage increase was 2.5. You'll see that the percent increase doesn't exactly match that, and the reason is that firefighters, when they're hired, start at 70%, and then they move to 80, 90, and finally 100% in their wage progression. So some of these firefighters are getting a 10% wage increase on top of their 2.5 wage increase in that particular year. Under the deputy fire marshal stipend, you'll see a reduction of $10,300. That was the stipend that the fire marshal, assistant chief fire marshal used to get when we met earlier in the year to talk about the position switch. I told you that would be absorbed into the salaries. So that is a reduction there, but it's been moved up into that salary line. Some of the other areas we made some changes, and again, this is based on our experiences and where we are with hiring all the new people, the training, the stuff that's gone into it. We were able to have some slight reductions in overtime and in sick. These are accounts I can't really, I don't know, last year we had a pretty significant surplus in the sick account. We had a really great year for lack of injuries and stuff. This year it's opposite. So it's based on my best experiences that I can give you, but we're trying to keep things as cost efficient and as low as possible for obvious reasons. And then the increase in stipends, again, that's all of these newer paramedics are now they have earned their paramedic stipend, and we're going to start paying that. That's pretty much the changes on the personnel side. In the remaining part of the operating budget, we have an increase in repairs and maintenance. The fleet is getting older. We have 5 pieces of apparatus that are over age 20 right now. So, just increased maintenance costs on that, and the price of doing business is going up. One area where we have a significant jump is in the area of medical supplies. It's a $18,000 increase, or 21.4%. Supply and demand is really driving that. In addition to that, the cost of buying COVID supplies, personal protective equipment, which we never use to the extent that we have, obviously, in this last year or so. And the finance director reminded me that, we have no guarantee that we'll be getting FEMA money back to cover these costs in this upcoming year, so we want to budget for it. Hopefully we do get some reimbursement, but I thought it was a good advice. And that's pretty much the highlighted changes on the operating side.
Okay, so the request is for $6,896,741, increase of $221,259, and 3.3%, as the chief has given us the highlights for. Board has questions? Yeah. Charlie?
Hey, Chief, is the CMed figure at 12,000, is that pretty fixed?
That's a fixed cost for the support services we get through Valley.
That changes every year.
No, that used to change every year. Remember, we used to pay a much higher amount when we were with New Haven CMed. Now we're with Valley Shore. It's Madison, Guilford, North Branford, and Branford. We pay that. We each pay
so it's fixed for this.
Yeah, they have not gone up in the last 3 years.
Okay, thanks.
One other thing, if I wanted to mention, I forgot, was that on the revenue side, the SAFER grant, we're beginning our, February we began our final year, so at a 35% reimbursement. So in the upcoming budget year, we will still see about 6 months of that, and it's projected at about $180,000 on the revenue side to come in to help with some of these increases.
Thanks, Chief.
Do you have a question?
Jeff? Yes.
Chief, on page 35-1, DC Administration and Services, that's a new hire. That's where Gary was promoted out of, so you're looking to fill that?
Yes, that'll be filled this year.
Okay. And And I see the fire marshal position, has the fire inspector position been filled?
The fire marshal position is, I budgeted for the fire marshal. We will not be funding the fire inspector position.
We talked about it in the past.
In the past, yeah.
Right, thank you.
You all set, Jeff?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, questions from the RTM members or general public with regards to this budget? Operating budget? Okay, Chief, we'll move on to, I believe, 3513 and beyond on your capital requests.
Thank you, Joe. On page 3513 is the overall capital improvement plan. These are the requests for this year. The fire apparatus sinking fund is just that. It's a sinking fund. We put a certain amount of money into that account to get to a number in a certain year where we're going to replace a major piece of apparatus. I've been bringing up the fact that in the last couple of years, when I've come up to speak to you guys, that we purchased five major pieces of apparatus between 1992 and 2001. We just replaced the 92. In this year, we were short about $24,000 the company kicked in from donations to cover the shortfall there, but it's left us a zero number in the fire apparatus sinking fund. The replacement schedule is a little bit, I believe, on the next page. So that'll kind of give you an idea, where we're looking to get and the number we're looking to get to. And again, it's designed to be a sinking fund, but if in your, in the future when we get closer to that date, if you decide to fund it in some other way, if at all, then, but that's what we need to get there. Same thing with the ambulance sinking fund. It's just that we have 5 frontline ambulances now. We intend to replace the oldest of those 5, and the number that I've requested is a pretty solid number of what we're going to need to get there.
So you'll be purchasing an ambulance this year.
An ambulance this year.
One for next year, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So 1 ambulance this year.
Question on that, Joe?
Sure, Jeff.
Is that a whole ambulance or is that just chassis?
That's the entire ambulance, and it includes the stretcher and the stretcher mount, which both of those items alone account for almost $50,000 worth of the price.
I understand, but we don't refurbish the boxes any longer? Is that we're moving away from that program?
We went away from it, but I'm seriously looking to see if we can get back. I'm hoping I want to be able to, we can do a couple of things. We can look at it, and it's probably going to reduce about $40,000 to $50,000 off the overall cost. It's just whether I'm comfortable with. I don't know if you recall.
I get it. You only can flip the box so many times before you.
It wasn't even that. It was that the warranty issues on the box and the manufacturers that used to do it and then certify it as a whole ambulance.
Correct.
They got out of the business, and the last one that we had scheduled was going to be just the local guy doing it, and he ended up losing. He was on a cash-only basis with suppliers. I didn't feel comfortable buying somebody, spending some money on. We would have had to pay up front, and then if he went out of business, where were we going to left?
We went down that road years ago. It cost us a lot of headaches.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
I budgeted for a new one, but we are.
I just asked the question because I know that was kind of a practice in the past.
The radio sinking fund, we do finally, we've been putting money away for it all these years to get the Exit 56 full repeater site for both police and fire. That would be funded out of this particular account. The Siting Council just approved the tower, so we should see shovel on ground at any time for that. That'll help with our coverage in that area of town, especially once we're inside buildings.
So that's going, that $270,000 is going to your repeater tower you bought?
It's going to the repeater site. And then this was designed originally to replace mobile and portables. Unfortunately, that would be fine if all of them were starting new. What we've looked into the world of, especially in the volunteer world, a lot of those portables are well beyond their life and they're no longer supported. So I'm looking at purchasing upwards of like 24 portable radios at $3,000 a piece.
So that's included in this?
That's included in this price.
In the 270.
The extrication tools we purchased last year, so that's removed. The SCBA sinking fund, which is our breathing apparatus fund, is pretty much funded, at $85,000 a year to get us to the year 2026 here. And that is a full replacement of all of our breathing apparatus, which was purchased, at that point it'll put it almost 16 years old, which is 1 year over the life expected. Oh, and the cardiac monitor is, the reduction from 35 to 28 is a reflection of the older technology, but they haven't come out with the latest and greatest, but the price has continuously come down for cardiac monitors.
Okay, so so we are buying a cardiac monitor?
We are buying a cardiac.
And what's the cost of that?
It's about $28,000.
Okay. Does that show up on a chart somewhere that I'm missing?
The replacement cost, John?
Yeah.
No, we pretty much fund one a year in the off year because their lifespan's between 8 and 10 years.
It's on 3513, Joe.
Yeah, 30. It's the description. So.
Yeah, I see that.
And then 1 year we replace all the
Thanks, Joe.
the defibrillators.
Gotcha. Okay. Back to the summary. Okay. Thanks, Chief. It's, okay, you want to hit on the, why don't we see if there's questions with regards to the capital?
Joe, I got a question.
Jeff?
Chief, regarding engine 2 and engine 4, I understand those are 24 years old. At what point did we refurbish them?
We refurbished them. We did some corrosion protection. They weren't really a full refurbish, but it's given them some longevity.
Right.
What we're going to look at too is the overall, how much of the fleet that currently exists is needed to maintain our ISO rating. We're looking at, more than likely in the future, some sort of consolidation among the volunteer units. We've had a fairly just kind of alarming reduction in the amount of people. And, for instance, one of our companies is missing about 90% of their calls. So, we'll look at some consolidation with that in the future.
Thank you.
I have it shown right now, but it's pushed a little bit further out than the page would print.
Okay. Other questions on the capital requests? Questions from RTM members or members of the public? Okay. Thanks, Chief. You want to talk about the revenue side of it on page 3521?
So last fiscal year, we finished the year with a record $2,067,000. This year, I don't think we're going to be as robust. Our overall call volume has been down with COVID, and the transports have gone from 23% non-transport to 27% non-transport, and we can only bill for transports. The reasons for that is a couple, I believe. One is people don't want to go to the hospital. So whereas before, if they were feeling, bad for whatever reason, they'd want to get transported to the hospital. The other thing is people in motion create issues. We haven't had a lot of people out and about and doing the things that they normally do that get themselves in trouble that end up getting us called to the scene and subsequently transporting them to the hospital. And a good portion of our elderly population, quite frankly, in the last years of their life, who may use our services 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times in a year, unfortunately, we lost a significant number in various nursing homes. I don't know how much of an actual impact it has, but it's all part of the equation. So, but historically, it's when you look at everything on a longer scale, we're not getting any slower. We're not going to get any less busy. It's just a dip.
You're on a blip right now.
We're on a little bit of a dip right now. But essentially.
So what are you estimating for revenues for next year?
We've left it flat at $1.8 million.
Okay. And you may or may not hit that for this year.
I'm a little concerned about that.
All right.
I think just the way,
I understand.
yeah, just the way things are right now, I've been just letting Jim and Jamie know where I feel things are looking. My gut's telling me it's probably going to be about $1.60 less than what we had taxed for.
Gotcha.
But time will tell. A couple more months of revenue, we'll know.
Thank you. Questions on the revenue, Charlie?
Hey, Chief, how strong a competitor is AMR? I forgot the number.
To us as a competitor, we have a monopoly on the town of Branford. We can't do interfacility transport, so they might transfer patients from Branford Hills to the hospital for doctor's appointments or admitting to the floor. But if they go through the emergency room, it's an emergency call. The Branford Fire Department ambulance gets the call. So all 911 calls are handled through us.
Okay, thanks.
And they can only do it for a mutual aid request.
Thanks.
Okay, other questions from the chief or the deputy chief or the chairman of the commission?
Chief handled it all.
Okay, thank you. Anything you'd like to add there, Robert?
I don't.
You're good?
I'd like you to know we work very hard to try to keep things under control, and we appreciate your support.
All right, thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Take care. Next up is police services, page 30 and 31.
Chief, good evening. We're having some Zoom volume issues, so if you can speak closely to the microphone.
Sure, do my best.
Good evening, Chief and Deputy Chief. Welcome.
Good evening. All right. So basically, I'll just give a quick overview on the total department requested budget. It's a total increase of 2.1%. Nothing really significant in the personnel items. You will see a $8,400 decrease in the dispatcher salary line. That is due to 2 new employees that have come in that they're at a lower step, so that's adjusted to accommodate that. They're very new. They have less than a year with us, so as they progress through the union contract, that will go up. You'll see a small decrease in the vacation line, $4,400. Again, this is due to bringing in newer police officers that don't have the tenure to get to the higher steps of vacation. So we adjust that line and that variable for that. Moving on into the non-personnel items. One that you'll see educational expense, that's a contractually driven, but thankfully a lot of our officers have finished their college endeavors, so those that are intending on going, you'll see a decrease there. The biggest change in the non-personnel items, it was a transfer. You'll see the $12,000 going into the professional development line. Where I took that from was the membership, conferences, and meetings. That's the second to last of 588-200 account. What that was we belonged to what is called the South Central Criminal Justice Administration, and we did various trainings with them. They did some recruitment and some promotional processes, and over the years we've kind of moved away from their services, and it was a $12,000 annual fee. We've moved into different venues, online formats, so we didn't see the value there, and in light of what has occurred this year and the training demands that we're focused on, I see a significant need for training. So that was an area we were able to cut, and I moved it up there. So that's where you're seeing that $12,000 from. In the employment testing line, requesting $6,200 increase in that line. What is driving that is the police accountability bill that they passed. Under that bill, we have to drug test the officers, and we have to send them for psychological evaluations. It's a percentage base during a certification year for the drug testing. The police officers are certified on 3 years, 3-year periods. So within that period, we have to get that group of officers drug tested. And then on the psychological wellness checks, that's roughly a 25% of our department annually. We have to do that. Now, that's the estimated cost from the vendors for the drug testing, for the mental health checks. We're going to do our best to schedule, and we didn't put any increases in our overtime but again, these are on-duty assignments that now add to our scheduling and our workload, and quite frankly, we're going to try to intermingle it with some training. So that's the increase there. The purchase services account, that's our account that has all our software or our contracts. Someone often said in policing, with these lines, every vendor will hit you for $3,700 or $3,300 a year for a user agreement or a licensing fee. This is compliments of our live scan fingerprinting machine that the state of Connecticut provides us, but again, you have to have the user agreement for the printer, for the machine, for the maintenance, so it's kind of an unfunded mandate. That's where you'll see the increase in the purchase services line. The yearly ongoing contract, the radio communication expense line, that's our contract with Norcom and Motorola for the infrastructure of our radio system for the police, fire, and public works. That contract consistently just goes up. I've looked into it. There's a few areas in the future we might be able to cut some items out of there, but they're warranty issues. And where you get in trouble if you don't do this is there's software upgrades, actually, a lot of software upgrades in these systems. And as municipalities, a lot of times they'll kick the can down the road and they don't fund this like we do. So that's where that drives that number in that contract. So that's almost a yearly bet that you can see coming through all the time. Other than that, that covers pretty much non-personnel. Again, it's kind of a lean 2.1 ask. Vast majority of it's all contract driven. The non-personnel items we think we can do okay with as presented.
Okay, why don't we stop there, Chief? And so it's a total budget request on the operating side of $7,191,885, $149,585 increase, as the Chief said, 2.1%. Questions from the board on the operating budget?
Question, Jeff. Chief, on accumulated sick pay, that's a new line item. Is that because we have a known retirement? I saw in the write-up.
Yes.
Usually we don't know ahead of time, so we don't fund it.
Those officers that enter into the drop plan, we can project that, and we do have one.
You have one, right? Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Questions from the RTM members of the public? There are no takers on that. So, Chief, why don't we move to the capital request? What page is that on?
3115.
3115. Okay.
So the capital is, item-wise, is essentially cookie cutter from last year. The normal request for police cruisers, a $9,000 portable radio replacement. Like the fire chief said, we have to stay on top of these. They cost us about $3,000 each. So you've been funding that for years, and we buy those in piecemeal so we don't get caught with a big bill and years from now. One of the asks is a license plate reader. For those of you who don't know what this technology is it's a scanner that is mounted on one of the police cars, and it scans the license plates. This was something that myself and the deputy talked about last year, and I chose not to pursue it. However, we have seen a 60% increase in stolen motor vehicles throughout the town, and as all of you have known in the media, it's a statewide issue. But this is a valuable tool that will assist the officers to be able to locate those vehicles, and quite frankly, even locate ones that need to be recovered that are dumped in parking lots. It can scan thousands of license plates, very quickly. We have one currently that is operational, and this is an ask for a second. And below that, you have the ballistic vest replacement. Again, this is just a fund. If you remember a few years back, we had a purchase vest for the department. They're a 5-year cycle for replacement, and that's just the $8,200 to keep that account where it needs to be.
Okay, questions on the capital request of $328,357 as outlined on page 3115. Charlie?
Chief, do you want to mention anything about the coming need to fix the jail cells?
Yeah, so when we look at the building's in very good shape. The maintenance has been done at regular intervals. However, our cell blocks, they do not meet today's standards. And when we look at our operation, we look at it from a civil liability standpoint. Where are our high liability areas? And, coming in, the number one area I saw right away was our holding facility. We try not to hold people to mitigate those risks. We do our best, but often our visitors aren't very happy. They engage in behavior that isn't always appropriate. Some are self-injurious and will try to hang themselves. And the way that the doors are constructed, they're an old style that aren't used now. They have the bars on them that you would see like in the movies. That's not where a building of today's standard should be. They need to be flat-fronted doors with no protrusions or anything that you can hang anything on or use as a stable base. And also, in this day and age, specifically, we look at COVID, but we look at TB and bloodborne pathogen issues. Our HVAC systems need to be robust. There needs to be an exchange of air. And lastly, we look at the threshold width of a doorway in a cell block. If you think of a regular door at like 36 inches, try struggling with someone in a 36-inch area. That's basically steel, and that threshold for us is a danger point. So the newer cell designs, we have one which we call a biohazard cell that does meet these needs. So we've closed several others, and we only try to use that one, but if we have overflow or more than one, we have to revert back to this. So have some talks with the first selectman and Brian at GGB, and so we'd like to get that moving forward. In the next year or so, we'll start looking at it, but we have to get some plans.
So we might see something in a year or two?
We're currently going to, I've spoken with the architectural firm that they did 3 other departments, Trumbull, Berlin, and there was one other that retrofitted to meet today's standards. Unfortunately, the companies that produce these doors, there's very few of them. So these 3 municipalities went together about 2 years ago and bid this out together. So it's just a matter of, I think that we're well suited. I think our current facility, the way it's designed, but some of the numbers from those municipalities were $300,000-400,000 just for the cell block.
Thanks.
Okay. Jim, you had a point?
Yeah, just to kind of echo on some of the stuff that the chief was talking about, Charlie, just to set some realistic expectations about a time frame is, one of the things that we're wrestling with a little bit, and we may come out with something soon, is that you heard a presentation from General Government Buildings, and there's essentially a little more than $500,000 worth of projects related to the police department, cell blocks, windows at the V&A, that whole general area, generators, roof areas, and the chief has identified some issues with the cells, and there's other things related to the site. So one of the things we're kind of wrestling with is, do you kind of take that on as like one approach? In other words, say, okay, here's where we are today, here's where we want to be, what does it take to do that? And basically do it in a sort of like a full effort as opposed to trying to do all the little pieces, and that's something that we're considering and looking at, but there will be some steps along the way. So.
Thanks, Jim. Other comments or questions on the Capitol? questions from the RTM members or general public? So, all right, Chief and Deputy Chief, thank you for that budget. Spend a minute on the special services, special detail. I know that's your, just a perfunctory to some extent. There's a request of $525,000, and it's offset by revenues of $525,000. So really, that's, I know you charge a premium in order to try to bring money back to the town for the depreciation, and in addition to the cost of the officer.
Yep, that's correct. That's basically a revenue, but we exceeded it. I think we were on track for just shy of $1 million. I think last year was.
Yeah, 445,000 this year.
So far,
Yeah, she said 445. Well, your mic wasn't on, so she said 445,000.
Yes.
She just looked on the computer, so.
Okay, questions on this budget? Go through the protocol on this. Any questions from RTM members or general public? None? Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Good to go. Next is Parks and Open Space Authority. We're going to call it page 60. And okay. Welcome, Richard. How are you?
Good. I'm Richard Shanahan. I've taken the spot of Ainsley Hyman as chair of Parks and Open Space. And the budget should be fairly simple because we're just keeping it the same as last year, with the exception of the, I guess the 2% COLA for the open space patrol.
Okay, so the request is $61,646, increase, as Richard pointed out, of $804. And this is a fund that is supported by revenues, and there's a transfer in from the general fund of $26,800. The rest of the revenues come in from leases and royalties and some other small revenues. And as you pointed out, the expenditures are $61,646, basically $800 increase.
Correct.
Questions on this budget? So, and just point of reference, you cover all open space?
Correct.
All major...
Right, Beacon Hill, Pisgah Brook, Supply Ponds, and the quarry.
And where did I read about the, is that on the capital side?
Correct.
Okay.
That's where there's a...
So we'll get to that in a minute then. I see your... So for the operating side here is 61,000. Are there any other, no other questions on this? Questions from the RTM members or members of the public? Okay, Richard, I guess we'll, you have a special project proposal?
I do. The overall maintenance of, the Parks and Open Space has been working. That's why we're not asking for any increase, even with this past year with the tornado and the increase of visitors with COVID. However, in trying to take stock of all these different properties, there really hasn't been a lot of, improvements over the year. They've done a great job of maintaining. And what I'm looking at is trying to get ahead of this and, continue my fight about ATVs, which is still big time out there. But get new signage, get new access points for various neighborhoods that are sort of closed out of the area. Signage. So this coming year, Pisgah and Salt and Stall are the main priorities. The ATV problem is significant. And then the other is the supply ponds, pond water treatment. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to go, but last year and the year before, there was major algae growth. There's a lot of aquatic invasives. And, for an area that's like the center point of all this open space, it's quite ugly. And so we're looking at, this is just an initial estimate for some sort of treatments, which we have to look at, with DEP and all of that. But that's for, 1 or 2 year treatment and hopefully get it under control.
So the request here is $40,300. Are there questions from the board on this, Charlie?
Hey, Rich, I've never seen this before, but under supply fund, traffic calming measures, is that like slow down?
Yes. Yes. I've talked to the police department and they put in one speed hump. We need more.
No, I never heard that phrase. Traffic calming measures. That's all. That's new to me.
A lot of people just driving down that road, it's like, slow down.
Okay.
I did have a comment from a person from the public who asked me about the damage in the supply pond from the tornado.
Yes.
I know years ago when I think it was a tornado that came through the Pine area on the kind of western side there. Just wondering, there's funding to remove debris in there, or?
Really, there isn't. The trails have all been cleared. There's a couple of areas that need, that are questionable in terms of being safety related. But all the other branches and trees that are down, they're probably going to do more damage going in there trying to clean it up. And then what are you going to do with it when you get it? So, the attitude is it's nature, just let it take its place.
Richard may not be aware of this, but we have that FEMA fund that we set up for some of these disasters. Some of them get reimbursed, some of them don't. And I know John Hefferly was basically working with, I think you folks, right, Jamie, on that, and some of that stuff did get charged to the FEMA fund. Now, from where I sit, I don't know how much of that still needs to be done, or if that did everything, but there were other sources of funds that we used to try to assess some of that damage. And that's from the August 27 storm, I believe, right, which has not been a declared disaster because it was pretty much localized, in North Branford, North Haven, and Branford. And I think Isaias, you generally were okay. Isaias has since been declared a disaster, and we did have our meeting about a week ago, introductory meeting with our project person, and we're meeting again on Friday. So we are going to try to recover money on Isaias, but the tornado was not a FEMA event, but we did charge stuff to that because that's typically been our policy on handling these things. That's why we set up the FEMA fund, and we did basically do 2 appropriations from the general fund, one last year and one this year, each for $150,000. So as we get closer to the end of the year, we'll do a reconciliation, so where we make out some of these other reimbursement efforts. But so you did get some relief to do what your constituent has identified. So
a lot of that area was around the dam and around the roadway, which was very accessible. And so a lot of that was removed by Publicworks and what have you. But for all the other trees and what have you, once you get into the parks, we're just leaving it.
Thank you.
Chairman, I just might add, in following up on, so there were some efforts, as Jim had just mentioned, with engineering and public works, but also, we have, as this board knows, thousands of acres of open space that is being managed by essentially this volunteer commission, so I thank them for their work in getting those trail systems, which is quite extensive, open up, and I know Rich had coordinated a number of volunteer efforts, and I think Branford Rotary was instrumental in putting some work parties together to get the trail system open throughout the supply pond, which was hit significantly during that storm. So I just wanted to thank them publicly, and Rich.
Just about all the trail clearing was done by volunteers.
Yeah, okay.
It was amazing.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Tuhill, you have a question, comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Frank Toohill from the Representative Town Meeting. How you doing, Rich?
Good, how are you?
Good. Question on page 60.1. This is one of your capital items. You're asking for $28,800 for this coming fiscal year to work on Pisgah Brook property and salt install.
Correct.
So I don't understand what you're going to do with Lake Saltonstall because that's owned by the Regional Water Authority.
No, Saltonstall Mountain, not Lake Saltonstall. That's the ridge.
Oh, the ridge up by Pisgah?
Right.
Oh, the portion that the town owned. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Rich. And then no, the cost, $28,800. Who's going to do that? And also, if you please tell me, what's the hourly rate for that?
The hourly rate, I don't know. I mean, this is going out, basically, we have one contractor that's done a lot of work in putting up the various boulders and blocks across the trail to prevent motorized vehicles. And then there are several gates being called for. So we have, emergency services will continue to have access even though the trail is blocked. So it's basically, I have a excavator coming in with all the boulders, placing them and getting in there with a bobcat or what have you. And a lot of these areas are very difficult to get into. It's not a normal.
I know it's steep up there, right? It's rocky. It's
all of that.
All of that. That's true. Yeah. All right.
So, and then some of that is also for trail. I'm going to say trail
upkeep. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to do, right?
There is.
Right? I mean, they wash out, and the hurricane.
Well,
the tornado.
The ATVs, they damage the trail so much that we really have to get them back to be usable.
Frank, and there's a good narrative on 60.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
3, which relate to that 28,000.
I saw that, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions from this budget presentation? Questions from the RTM members or general public? Okay, all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, thank you. Next is Recreation Department, page 45. Welcome, Alex. Welcome, Dale.
Good evening. I'm going to highlight on our top half. And one of the significant increases there is on regular wages and salaries. Everything in there is any of the contractual obligations we had. And one of the unaffiliated positions, which is my position, the assistant directors, and as a zero right now because they're going to be negotiating their next contract. I also had a decrease in the seasonal part-time help, and for a total of 4.9% for our regular wages and salaries. What really drove that is, if you remember last year through the Board of Finance and also the RTM, you approved half of a position we had put in for an arts, culture, special events coordinator last year. And so we're looking for the other half at this point. And if you look onto, when you have time and your leisure to look at it, we also had worked with Margaret Liberta to refine the job description because it really did change in this last year also. I'm not sure if you realize this, but we were really part of the essential workers. I'm not sure if they mentioned it last night, but our staff has been assisting with the vaccines at the community house from Dagmar and her staff. We've been doing that. We've been working with them throughout that with our staff. We also, in that position, we also consider ourselves essential workers, which we were, because when the kids were out of school this year, one thing that we provided was, number one, we provided to the employees in town we gave the options for any of the workers in town that if they needed to go to work or their spouses needed to go to work, that we could look after their kids and we would do their schoolwork. So our staff members and also this staff member also assisted with that throughout the year. We also did expand that to the school system. So all the elementary schools, 3 of them, Murphy, Slaney, and Tisco, we had kids come during the week. We had to follow the guidelines of who we could have there, who we could not have there, but our staff became really their eyes and ears for their parents. They were the ones that worked with them from the community house on their laptops all through the school year until they went back this week, so the whole school year so far. And the other part of it was they also assisted, I mentioned earlier before that we had assisted with the vaccines this year. And also Margaret Liberto's here, and I just want to say she really helped us develop, refine that job description, which we kind of, this position also got really in the community. People really needed during that year to do things, and we had to really think out of the box and come out there to do some other things to really give them some type of normalcy, which we did throughout the year. Also working with the business community in the town and many of the civic organizations. So it took another type of a direction. At this time, I'm just going to have Dale, if she would kindly just expand a little bit on what I gave to you as an intro.
So I think Alex touched on the part that really we became essential child worker, child care, through the help of HR. We serviced over 50 families this year. Their kids came during the hybrid, so for those that don't know, like if they went to school on Monday, Tuesday, they were eligible to come to us Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and vice versa. If they went to school Thursday, Friday, they came to us Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Some of the stories were kind of sad. Parents were really worried about losing their jobs, and we get phone calls and say, is there any way you can help us out? Like, I don't know if I'm going to have to quit my job to help childcare. So we opened up the door 7:45 to 3:45 every day. Sometimes those kids stayed into our after-school program, which we're starting to see an increase now in those numbers just based on the fact that school went back to the elementary level 5 days a week. We shared in their excitement. We missed the kids. They brought some normalcy, not just to themselves, but definitely to us. They had a lot of the social, emotional piece throughout the day. They were able to use the gym. For physical education, we had them outside a lot, which this position helped with that because we needed a lot of extra staff to keep eyes and ears on them and for them to access their education. And coming into the summer, parents are worried again. What are we going to do? Like, what are we going to do for summer care? So, again, we're coming to the drawing board to try to figure out how we can help that. We've had some talks with the Board of Ed. They're going to offer summer school. How do we bridge that gap if it's only 2 hours? So we're trying to offer wraparound services. Obviously, we have to be compliant with the Office of Early Childhood, with, their cohorting of kids and contact tracing still, and keeping the groups small. And having this extra person on staff, seeing we only have 2 programmers right now that are full-time, this person would be able to help add another additional layer that we could bring in some child care for this summer as well, and kind of expand what we were planning to do. Parks and Rec is not just sports. A lot of people think it's just sports camps and all that stuff. It's really morphed into, culture, arts, music, cooking, culinary. Like we were in the process of doing a whole culinary camp last year, and obviously due to COVID, that got shut down. But so this person has really helped bridge that gap and continues to grow. We started with the theater program. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Back in 2018, we had 34 kids. The second year in 2019, we more than doubled that number, and we were on track last year to continue to double that number. And it wasn't just for kids, it was for adults as well. So we saw a lot of intergenerational stuff happening. And as the governor keeps opening up things, and everyone's like, when's the theater coming back? When's the theater coming back? So we're expecting that that's going to come back bigger and stronger. And the demand is going to be a lot. It's going to be there because they're looking for it now. And we've kind of done that with some of the these little pockets of programs that we've designed. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the videos. The most recent one was the thank you to all the essential workers, and it wasn't just the police, the fire, the nurses. It was, you know, the people that are working in the COVID clinic. It was the teachers. The big focus was on the teachers. So that was sent out, I think, to all the town people and the RTM members. I'm not sure if you guys got it, but it was on our website and on our social media platforms, which this person also does, because we don't have a social media site even for the town. So they've been doing a lot of the social media for the town and for our department as well.
Thanks. I have a question I'm not sure, it's saying that we funded it 2021, and I'm looking at page 83, where it kind of breaks down the positions, and it's, what am I missing here, Jim? It doesn't, it's not showing this position.
Yeah, I think it was misrepresented, I guess is a way to say it. It was basically it was a part-time position. It wasn't funded. It wasn't a full-time position funded for 6 months. It was a part-time position, and so they're making it a part-time position full-time. So if it was a full-time position funded at half a year, it would have been in
so
page 83.
This position was funded in the seasonal and part-time budget line item. Okay.
And the money came back into that. And the other thing I want to expand on also, a lot of the special projects that we've had through the town, I mentioned about some of the community efforts that we had there. You know, we have the person that's in the position right now is really a talent and has just brought so much to the community. And on top of that, you know, we're going to be starting that up in April again. We're trying to, I don't know if you know, there was we were trying to do everything that we could within the numbers to try to, we weren't able to have our summer jazz series last year, but we were able to bring some entertainment to the green, which people have really got, you know, on Thursday nights, we're actually going to be looking for some other nights or even on a weekend day to try to expand that a little bit more and then move, you know, back to that. And we had a lot of groups that came that some did it for free, some we contracted out some low numbers because they know, you know, what we were going through. And, you know, we had a kind of a small group up there every week. And if you go up to the green, you know, I really give credit to the first selectman for this and also to, you know, Trista, the administrative assistant. They really, they brought all these tables and chairs up there and they even stayed through all our snowstorms and blizzards. And people really utilize the green, especially since the COVID era, 7 days a week. So we're trying to bring them some more opportunity to do. And this position really assisted with that. Our challenge was every week, as Dale knows, we go through, we just keep trying to do more things and we've got to cut the hours. We can't have that person go over those hours. So it's just been really challenging. So we just feel that we thought it was important last year. We were happy we started in that direction, but I think that as time goes on, we're really going to be rock and rolling again with the theater program too on top of that. So we just went a different avenue.
Okay, thank you. Questions on this position? I know they spent a fair amount of time on this request for the position, full-time position. Okay. You want to, there's nothing else really on the operational request as an increase?
Correct. We left that flat for this year.
Okay, so as I mentioned, the request is for $1,235,119, increase of $41,127. Questions on the operating budget for the Recreation Department from the general public, RTM members? Okay, so I think we're good on the operational piece for now. You want to move to capital? And I think is that 4515, Alex?
Yeah, 4515. When I met with our board earlier this year, our request is a lot higher from the request that we ended up putting in. You know, I talked to our board and we were trying to keep moving in the right direction. If you remember also that we did apply for a foot trust the year before. We applied for $450,000, which is, usually we apply for $200,000, which come back into the general fund. And what happened was we ended up getting that grant, which kind of went into this year, of $300,000. We just found out recently on March 6th, we applied for $200,000, $125,000 for operating, $75,000 for capital. We made so many improvements down there. We're continuing to do that. Our restrooms down there are ready to open full-time next week. That was a big project that took a little bit of time, but it's perfect timing for that. We're also finishing up the tennis courts. The last couple of days they're working on it completely refurbished all those tennis courts and the clay tennis courts and the fencing, the whole bit. I haven't done that in 50 years. But anyways, we did get that grant. So just in the last 2 years, just to put it in perspective, and Jim can correct me, that the last 2 years we have gotten $500,000 in the calendar year overall. So basically we got $300,000 last year, and we will in the calendar year, because they're different, we're fiscal, they're the calendar, so we got $500,000 over that 2-year period. So we're
from the foot trust.
Right, from the foot trust, so those dollars. So in our capital, I kind of dial it down a little bit. Our first request was $450,000. We also looked at where our capital was, what we had available in our fields and our fencing. Again, like Jim talked a little bit about some reimbursement from FEMA, but again, we've had a lot of costs that associated with that. If you over the last decade or so, you'll see up on top field renovation, basketball, tennis court renovation, fencing replacement, and you'll see moving forward, we were consistently getting $20,000 for each of those years. I dialed it back to this year for this 1 year because I know, again, it's another tough year, but I did not want to remove the Parks Tree Removal Pruning Program, which was in its rookie year last year, as you can see, and it's really important. Obviously, Jamie mentioned earlier how we work very closely with the engineering department, GGB. Gary Zielinski has been a tremendous help to us, and we're really working well together with all the departments, and we're trying to do our part, because in all our parks, we had a lot of damage. Also, we have a lot of trees that constantly, just from disease, from years that fall. So we're utilizing those dollars, so that's pretty important. And also, if you look down below, we came down to about $140,000, but you'll see Foot Park Playground renovation from the Foot Trust for $60,000. That's all the kids renovation down there. Also doing some surfacing down there at Foot Park, which hasn't been done in many years. And also there's a Foot Park tennis viewing area that is being developed right now for $15,000. A lot of the white pines were taken down in front. A lot of those white pines were just breaking off. Every windstorm we had, they were just falling. So we got a little bit aggressive with taking some of those trees down, from my end. But Gary Zielinski is in the engineering department working very close with me. We're going to make a nice viewing area there for people to have a little walkthrough, sit-down picnic tables, and it has a whole new plan of planting some new trees. So we're looking forward to that. But that's all paid by the Foot Trust, and then the remaining $65,000 was for a small pickup lining truck. It's not really to replace another truck. It's basically, we used to have a small little like Ford type of Ranger that we had that for lining of our ball fields, because we're lining all the soccer fields, and it's a lot easier to put that equipment into that to get around the fields to line them. And also, I thought we just are in the process of getting a new, we haven't had a dump for many years. We always rely on Publicworks. Last year you approved that in the budget. I also put in there for a plow sander package for that Chevy 3500 for $15,000. So that's our total capital. And I just want to make a comment. I'm not sure you know this, but we do assist Publicworks with snow plowing, especially on the sidewalks. You remember, Joe, we talked about that machine earlier, which has been really a godsend to do all the vent track. You approved that a couple of years back, and it's really been great. And our guys are not only just doing sidewalks, we also do side roads. So we have a couple of our pickup trucks with plows, and we figured with this for next winter season that we would have this package, so we put those dollars in for that moving forward.
Thanks, Alex. Questions on the capital? Request 140,000. Questions from RTM members, general public? Alex, anything else?
Yeah, I just have one comment, thanks to my able assistant here, Dale. Just to be clear on the $140,000 on the capital, $75,000 is out of the foot trust, non-tax dollars, and then the other $60,000 is $65,000 is out of the general fund, the tax dollars.
Got it.
That's all. I just want to make that point.
Thank you for that reminder. Okay, all set. Thank you, folks.
Thanks.
Next is cable television, Branford Cable Television, page 27.
Thank you, Chairman Mooney. Do you mind if I stand here?
You can do it from there.
This is a quick one. Yeah, Branford Cable Television, the subcontracting is staying flat at $7,000. That's for the filming of all of our meetings, town meetings, $100 for other supplies. And the donation expense, which is a line item that we included, I think, a couple budgets ago. Initially, it was $4,000. We increased it last year to $6,000. It's showing in your book currently at $6,000. However, I have had discussions with the manager of BCTV. From those discussions, I was going to ask the board to consider increasing that to $8,000. As we know, what the initial justification for having a donation to BCTV continues is the cord cutting that is occurring. A lot of their revenue comes from the amount of subscribers to the Comcast, the cable providers. Since 2014, there's been over 2,000 less subscribers in Branford, therefore less revenue coming from that source to BCTV. And that's about $5,000 alone that BCTV is no longer can rely on. And as we all can probably recognize, that trend is going to continue. Other than that, I think, other things hitting their budget is in particular this past year, and they're on a May 1st to April 30th fiscal year, is they couldn't do any fundraising events. Their large fundraising event had to be canceled due to the pandemic, so that hit their account. The other thing I just want to the board to realize, I mean, a lot of this equipment that is in this building, as well as BCTV, the station, the staff of BCTV and the board secure grants to buy and purchase that. And in 2020, they received a grant of $150,000 that comes through the state of Connecticut. They actually purchased about $70,000 of equipment that they now installed at the community house, therefore opening that up as another resource for us to have meetings and have that televised on BCTV. One other thing just I think is important to recognize, where, the cord cutting doesn't translate to less viewers of BCTV. Actually, what they're seeing is an increase in viewership through, still the traditional on TV, but through Facebook Live, as well as online streaming through the internet. But through those sources, they don't receive any revenue. So I just present that and ask the board if they would consider perhaps increasing that from $6,000 to $8,000.
Gotcha. So that would make that budget request $15,100.
Correct.
Okay, questions from the board? Questions from RTM members, general public? Okay, thanks, Jamie. Next, we'll move on to Board of Finance budget, page 12. Mr. Finch.
Okay. The Board of Finance budget, essentially the only increase there is the 2% for the board clerks. And again, all the other items, the actuarial services, the audit, and the printing and binding of the annual report is all kept flat. So it's a total increase of $95.
Total request budget at this point is $92,942. Were there questions on this budget? Questions from the public, RTM members? All set. Thanks, Jim. Move on to page 13, fiscal services.
Sure. Fiscal services is the finance department budget. The salary increases there are contractual for the town hall union staff. The supervisors union is unsettled for next year, so that's flat. And the unaffiliates are budgeted at 2% increase, so that rounds down to a 1.7% increase overall. The non-personal is down a little bit, and overall we're up less than 1%. The detail of those line items are on page 13.1.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Questions on this request for the finance fiscal services, $482,339, increase of $2,906. Questions from RTM members of the public? Okay, thank you. Next is public celebration, page 48.
All right, public celebration. The seasonal part-time help is the salary for the town band director. The other supplies is essentially their, for the most part, it's the music, and it's the and there's a small purchase for the Branford Chorale. The patriotic observance involves the various groups that participate in the two parades, in addition to trumpeters and and I mentioned the various groups that participate in the parade. And then the other is the fireworks, which is pretty much self-explanatory. So.
Okay, request of $35,219, no increase. Questions from the board? Questions from the general public, RTN members? Okay, thanks, Jim. Move on to sewer assessment fund on page 63. Request of $14,926 in expenditures.
And again, there's no change in that budget. They just offset each other, and you can see in the other year we did do some transfers out, and that was part of a large sewer authorization that we did back in 2020.
Okay. What's the fund balance on that?
It's roughly about $2.3 million.
Thank you. Questions on this operating budget? Request $14,926. Questions, RTN members, members of the public? Okay, thanks, Jim. Next is pensions and contributions, page 55.
Okay, so again, we kept the volunteer fire stipend line flat this year. The chief has mentioned that some of the participation rates are down. The COVID-19 certainly didn't help matters. This past month, the Fire Pension Committee made a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that the point requirements be reduced by 25% because certain things couldn't happen because of COVID, and felt that that was lowering the participation rate. So it went from roughly around, I think it was like 12 people qualifying up to somewhere roughly in the mid-20s. So we did increase some of the participation rate there. But again, you know, we didn't feel it would warrant an increase, and I know that Deputy Chief Murray is working to try to get those numbers up. Social Security, pretty self-explanatory. The retirement municipal employees, that is the vast majority of employees, with the exception of the police, are covered by the state plan. As we've reported in the past, the state plan has lowered their return on asset assumptions to 6.9%. Prior to that, it was in the 8 range. So the state is getting a little bit more conservative in their actuarial assumptions over the past couple of years. We're 6.5, just for a point of reference, so it's hard to criticize the state for dropping to 6.9. And so we know that those increases are getting phased in over a couple of years, and certainly reflected in the budget. The police pension fund contribution, that's the other group. Our funding policy is to fund 95% of the actuarial contribution. We're making a 100% funding recommendation. And as you're aware now that in the last couple of years now, this is all going into the defined benefit plan, whereas prior to that it was part of the match on the defined contribution plan. Some folks have kind of noticed what we've done. Some of you may be aware it was in the register, but the three of us actually were asked to speak to a neighboring town's council, and we spoke for about an hour and 45 minutes explaining our experience in Branford and answering questions from their mayor and council in terms of what we've done in Branford, and their consultant, who was assigned to them from OPM through an outside board, has also been in touch with us and learning about the approach that we had taken, because it was sort of bucking the trend, I guess, to do what we did and coming back to a defined benefit plan, which has helped the police department in terms of recruiting. We did not know that events in the country would conspire to make it harder to attract police officers, but the fact that we did make that pension change is helpful. So, but we do have a requirement to fund it. And like I said, our policy is to fund it in accordance with what our actuaries are recommending. The other is the volunteer fire plan, which is the defined benefit piece as an incentive to attract and retain volunteer firefighters. And that has been kept the same. And the last reports on both of those plans, that our funding ratios have both been north of 70%, which is actually decent. So we want to make sure that we maintain those. The volunteer fire was funded a little bit higher. I think they were like 76%, and the police was in the low 70s. So in order to get that up, you really need a couple things to happen. Some of them are good, some of them would be bad. You'd have shortened life expectancies, which is good for the fund, bad for the individuals, and then you'd have great returns over and above what we're assuming they would be. And then the second piece would be to put more money in. So those are kind of the options as a way to continue to improve that. And of course, funding your actuarial contribution over time will improve those ratios. Those are things that our rating agencies look at, and it's one of those other Office of Policy Management fiscal indicators as well. So, and then unemployment compensation is fairly self-explanatory.
Thanks, John. Okay, Okay, so the request is $5,880,329, increase of $433,905, 8% increase. Board questions?
Just a quick, hey, Jim, do you know what the rate is that we pay for unemployment compensation?
I don't, actually. I can get that for you, unless Margaret knows.
That's not that important, but it looks like a low number.
I mean,
so we ought to be ready.
No, wait a second, let me take a step back. So you're talking about like a premium? No, we're self-insured for that, so we actually get...
Isn't this what we pay the state?
But we're actually getting billed for that. We're not paying like a monthly premium, if that's what you're asking.
No.
They're self-insured.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's right.
So we're paying it, but it's not official. Right. It's not like a premium rate. It's not like your business probably pays a rate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, ours. Okay. They made a claim, we get billed for it.
I forgot you're self-insured.
And if you have a low turnover, then you have a low expense. So. Okay. Other questions on this budget? Questions from our TM members? Frank, you're all set?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All set on this one.
All right. Questions from the public? All set. Okay, thanks, Jim. Move on to employee group insurance, page 56.
Okay, the employee group insurance is essentially two pieces. It's our health insurance premiums, and we are self-insured with that, and also the OPEB piece. Because we are self-funded, it's at times more art than science. We work very closely with our pension consultants, and when I say we, I'm talking about myself and Margaret, and basically they help us estimate the claims. We've all acknowledged this was kind of a tougher year because it wasn't a normal year in terms of the claims experience. Another piece of it where we do buy insurance through the medical plan is through our individual and aggregate stop loss, and we've had meetings on that, and Margaret's proven to be a pretty tough negotiator with some of that in terms of offers to Anthem, because we do have other carriers that are involved in that, getting pricing. I mean, Anthem is where we bought it in the past, but one of the things we do is we seek outside prices as well and see where that compares to Anthem and try to exercise some leverage in the market. So.
Okay. So that's the employee insurance premium, $5,701,000, and then you have the transfer out to the OPEB.
Right, and that's for the employee health insurance costs or legacy costs. We have the OPEB trust, as you're aware, and the Board of Ed also funds it. The Board of Ed also contributes to the medical self-insurance fund. On the medical self-insurance, this is the second year where we tried to blend the rates for budget purposes, and many towns do that. In Branford, when we started out, we were always kind of rated separately, but for budget purposes, we try to blend that and try to basically smooth the changes in the amount that's budgeted in each area. And also, you may recall last year, the Board of Finance opted to fund the health insurance at slightly less than 100% of claims, and primarily I think that decision was based on the fact that we've had decent experience and the fact that that the self-insurance fund could absorb that if we were a little bit off in our estimate. So it's what we did last year. It's not reflected in this ask. It's something that typically comes up in some of the discussions that Joe mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, and so I'll wait and see what happens in the next couple of days. So.
Thank you, Jim. Questions on this budget? Employee group insurance total $6,569,190, actually showing a reduction from the current year of $37,000. Questions from RTM members? Members of the public? Thank you, Jim. Next, we'll move to municipal insurance on page request of $2,323,902, increase of $41,335. Jim, you're going to handle that with
Yep. Yeah, basically, Margaret and I get an estimate from our insurance broker, HD Seeger, and they basically, go out to the markets and try to work, a reasonable estimate for us that, we could rely on for budgeting purposes and not get surprised when we get our renewals. So the town has a variety of coverages, property, general liability, law enforcement, automobiles, public officials, crime, cyber, pollution, flood, so there's a whole series of lines there. And the workers' comp piece for the excess, that's paid out of the workers' comp fund, which is the next thing I'll talk about. But so essentially, in this case, we are actually buying insurance as opposed to medical, and like I said, we work with an outside agency on that.
Right. Okay. Questions on the insurance, the first two items, which is $1,148,000. Any questions from RTM members of the public? Okay, you want to talk about the workers' comp and the HHH fund?
Yeah, and I probably should have just mentioned the insurance damage is items where we're basically, something gets broken, where we actually end up, fixing it, replacing it. Police car gets in an accident, gets totaled. We paid out of the insurance damage account. The recovery comes in through miscellaneous, it comes in through the general fund, but the timing never works out perfectly, and you may not get back what you may need to pick a number of $40,000 car, but it's only worth 30 when it gets, so your recoveries never actually match up. The workers' comp fund, the request is $900,000. It's the town and the Board of Education, contribute to that, and we actually, this is like our third year using a actual valuation report that was done, and so we use that to base our claims. You may recall the first year we did that, we saw our liability jump up because one of the things that they would include in their report, which we would try to estimate on our own, was what is the right reserve requirements, and recognizing what the tail is on that. So that's something that they did. Heart and hypertension. Again, we've in the past year and a half we settled a fair number of cases. I think it's fair to say we're aggressive in settling our cases. And the reason, we may distinguish ourselves in this area is we actually have money in these funds to actually make deals. We find that the law firm that we use is very good in reaching out to folks, and where we've identified, we have myself, Margaret, and folks from the Board of Ed, we have an annual stewardship meeting. In that, we go through all the claims. If we see some that we think are candidates to settle, we certainly ask the attorneys to make a overture to the claimants. And and you'd be surprised. There are times where there's an interest in making a deal. Sometimes we're able to structure them over a period of 2 fiscal years, and sometimes we try to work with the person in terms of how they want to manage it from their tax liability. So we could kind of, structure the timing of the payments, I think the town's been successful. Our stewardship reports have shown that we've been successful. I assume the claimants are happy. They're represented by lawyers, and they're making the settlements, and I think it's typically a win-win, because we're basically trading money for risk, and that's kind of what insurance is anyway. You're always trading money for risk. So to the extent someone wants to make a trade with us, and we have the money to do that, it works out well. If we didn't have the money, we wouldn't settle these things because we wouldn't be in a position to make the offers.
Thanks, Jim. Questions on those other 2 items, either the workers' comp or the heart and hypertension fund transfers?
Chairman Mooney?
Yes.
Excuse me. Henry's asking, could you please move your microphone closer? The audio is fading. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Questions on this $2,323,902?
I have a question. Is the heart and hypertension, is that sunsetting? Is that?
Well, let's see, I used to have the date in my mind. I think it was like April 1st of, do you remember the date? I'll look it up. I was around when it changed, so that gives you some idea. But a lot of officers were basically, and firefighters, were basically hired before that date. So ultimately, we should see this drop off at some point in time. Now, that's if nothing changes, right? So there have been efforts in the past, and municipal advocacy groups, et cetera, have tried to push back on that because folks go to the Capitol and will ask for to either restore or expand these benefits, and there have been some nail biters over the years. And if traditionally, it probably was decent politics for folks at the Capitol because, in effect, folks are lobbying them. They're basically can say they supported the groups, and somebody else pays for it, right? So it's kind of a nice situation. So that's why, and the people that are actually advocating for this many times are the claimants and the folks who are largely sympathetic cases. So there's an emotional appeal to the ask, whereas a finance director or a mayor arguing that it has an impact on the town's finances outside of this group doesn't carry the same weight.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Other questions?
Yeah.
Okay, questions from RTA members or general public? No. Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you, Jim. Move on to Labor Relations, page 19. Welcome, Margaret.
It's finally nice to say hello.
Yes.
I'll be brief. So, page 19, there's no change from last year.
Page 19, okay, so Labor Relations is $62,500, no change.
Correct.
And questions from the board? We have a question from Mr. Toohill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, I see that 62.5 was asked for this coming fiscal year and the current fiscal year. Do you have any idea, how much is in that account now? How much has been used up, for that this fiscal year?
I'm happy to say only about 60% of it.
Okay, 60% has been used of the 62.5 for this fiscal year?
Approximately, yes.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, and you're in the active negotiations at this point with how many unions?
Yes, the next one we will be presenting is a water treatment union. The next one will be the Publicworks union for the Teamsters. The next one will be the supervisors union. And the next one will be the dispatchers, all happening within the next few months.
Okay.
I think the money is definitely warranted at this time.
Okay, thank you. Questions on this budget?
I just want to review, those are 3 contracts or 4 coming up?
4. Well, I just about completed 1, but there's 4 just between now and June.
The end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
And what about next year?
All right. Thanks.
I probably can't recite all of them.
Several, though.
There are several next year, yes.
That's fine. That's fine. So there's usually some renewals some negotiations are happening every year.
Oh, absolutely. I think that the challenge though is not the cost of the renewals at this point. It's the challenge of the grievances or the special circumstances associated with working with unions that often require some special management labor advice to prevent problems. And our goal has been to increase communication with the union. And we try to discuss employee relations problems, or at least I do, with the union representatives prior to them getting to the grievance stage.
Sure.
And I think we've been very successful at that.
Thank you. Okay, questions from the RTM members, other general public, or anyone else on this budget? No, then we'll move on to Human Resources, page 29.
Okay, I'll hit the highlights on page 29. The first is wages and salaries. That's there are 3 HR members, including myself, and we lost one this year and had to rehire a payroll coordinator. It's disappointing, but we found an experienced person who we hired at 100%, and that accounts for the difference in the cost. Instead of the prior person was hired at a lower salary at the 95 or 90%, the new person was hired at the 100% rate. So there probably will be a request for a small transfer by the end of the year. The second is a slight increase in the HRS services budget. I think that was formerly called the payroll budget. That budget involves our software use primarily with ADP for payroll, for tax services. As of June 21st, online open benefit enrollment. We've included in that number advanced e-time usage, which is our time and attendance system that we put in last year. The ADP self-service is our mobile app that people use on their phones to record their time, as well as get all HR communications, or many HR communications are right on their phone. And of course, the baseline system is the Workforce Now system, which houses all of our personnel data, which was essential in our use for all of our COVID reporting that we had to do this year. So that's about, for all of those products, we pay about $6,000 a month for those products, accounting for up to about $72,000 a year. That number varies, obviously, on the number of people you have on payroll. I'm asking for some additional monies to introduce DocCloud. DocCloud is a document management system. It's another software product of ADP. We've been extremely happy with ADP services in the last 2 years. The current system we have is totally obsolete. It doesn't even search information by topic, only by employee name. It's is not encrypted, thank you, which is an HIPAA problem, so I'm in potential violation there. So we'd like to move to DocCloud. It would cost about $3,000 to install it and to take our old files and move them onto this new system, the cloud-based system. And then it's about $214 per month for using it. So that's why I've just itemized that a bit so you can see the difference.
And you've got a requested increase for membership and conference and wellness program?
Yeah, the membership increase in conference was slight because of the new staff member. I need to integrate her with a couple other trainings. She's fairly young and professional growth, and also the assistant director for HR also needs to go to a couple management training conferences I'd like to include this year, if they have them.
And the wellness program?
Sure. During one of the negotiations, the union negotiations, it was requested for the town to build a wellness program as an incentive for the members. We tabled that and moved it as a wellness task force so that we could open up the idea of a wellness program to all employees. And we are currently in the process of having a task force, about a small group of employees who are interested in talking about wellness. Our first project will be to introduce an employee survey around the topic to see if there's enough interest for any programs associated with wellness, which would include those programs that look at our environment, our work environment, those programs that look at educating employees and their dependents about wellness, and the third, programs that look how to engage and incent employees to be at a better state of wellness in their life, whether it be health or financial or emotional. This is number of 8,000 is a little bit of a pie in the sky number, obviously, because we don't have a program to present. It's important, though, that I think that the town show this committee and the employees that there is an interest in wellness and their health, and as we all know, will help increase their productivity by at least introducing a budget. Nothing will happen within this budget line until other people review the programs or the suggestions. It'll be not Margaret Liberta making the decision, but a group of other people, including Jamie, of course. So I'd like your permission to include this number for next year as an opportunity to have a discussion and to show the town's commitment.
So will you be using, so am I equating this to like an EAP program?
We have an EAP program through the counseling center.
Okay.
We are looking more towards at least the conversations today, and again, we haven't done the survey. And the survey will go to employees and their dependents, but it'll be around more, I think, more health related. For example, one of the discussions was how can we help employees reduce stress in the environment? And what activities can we do during the days, whether it be walking groups, which obviously don't cost much, but of course you incent people to join walking groups as an activity. And we're generally trying to figure out what our needs are before I can be suggesting anything in particular to you.
Thank you. Questions on this operating budget? Bob, do you have one? No, you good? Good. Questions from RTM members? Members of the public? Okay. Thank you, Margaret.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate the presentation. So that concludes tonight's agenda. We will recess the Board of Finance until Thursday evening at 7 o'clock. Thank you and good night.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.